Mittens was a curious little cat with a penchant for mischief. With her soft, ginger fur and twinkling blue eyes, she could charm her way out of almost any situation. But today was different. Today was her first day at Feline Academy, where all young cats learned the rules of proper feline behavior. The bell rang, and Mrs. Whiskers, a stern yet fair tabby, stood at the front of the classroom. Mittens fidgeted in her seat, her mind wandering to the shiny, dangling toys she had seen in the yard earlier. As Mrs. Whiskers discussed the importance of grooming, Mittens' gaze drifted to the open window. She could see the yard, bathed in the golden afternoon light. She knew she shouldn't, but the temptation was overwhelming. Without a second thought, she slipped out of her seat and padded toward the door. Mrs. Whiskers' voice faded into the background as Mittens reached the sunlit yard. It was a playground of treasures, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, flowers swaying like dancers, and, most enticing of all, the mesmerizing shimmer of a silver bell tied to a tree branch. Mittens pounced and swatted the bell, giggling with delight at its tinkling sound. She was lost in her own world, unaware that eyes were watching her from the classroom. Back inside, Mrs. Whiskers noticed Mittens' absence. With a sigh, she motioned for the rest of the class to follow her. They stood by the window, watching as Mittens played, oblivious to her audience. Mrs. Whiskers stepped outside, her stern face giving nothing away. Mittens, still enthralled by the bell, didn't notice the approach until a shadow loomed over her. Startled, she turned to see her teacher standing there, arms crossed. "Mittens, what are the rules of the school?" Mrs. Whiskers asked, her voice calm but firm. Mittens' ears drooped, and her tail curled around her feet. "To listen and stay inside during lessons," she mumbled. "That's right," Mrs. Whiskers replied. "You must understand that there is a time for learning and a time for play. Today, you missed an important lesson on grooming, and now you must face the consequences." Mittens' eyes widened with worry. "The consequence is to help me clean up the classroom after school," Mrs. Whiskers announced. "Maybe then you will remember the importance of paying attention." Though disheartened, Mittens nodded. She realized that her playful nature needed to be balanced with responsibility. As she helped Mrs. Whiskers tidy up later, Mittens promised herself to pay better attention in the future. There would be plenty of time for play, but learning was crucial too. The next day, Mittens sat attentively through the lessons, her mind free from the distractions outside. And when the bell finally rang to signal playtime, she dashed outside with the other cats, her heart light and her conscience clear.